Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for OPE. Let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for OU. No, wanna go, gonna glow.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. I am Iowa Joe. Kwano is doing Kwano things somewhere. I really don't know what. Last week it was birthdays. This week I don't know what it is. But in good OPE tradition, I did bring in another guest, a good friend, a little brother in a way, Joey Van Zummeren, to come in and talk wide receivers with me. So, Joey, I know we were doing a little bit of talk beforehand, but what's going on with you, bro?
Right. Well, enjoying time here at the University of Missouri School of Journalism. Packers fans will appreciate this, and sports fans in general. John Anderson is now working at the Mizzou J School, and just a few weeks ago, I saw him walking through the journalism school, and at first I was like, "What in the world is John Anderson doing here?" And then it occurred to me. So yeah, it's been going good here. Getting excited for the draft now.
Aren't you?
I'm not getting paid by him yet. I don't have any classes with him yet, but obviously I gotta plug the institution. But yeah, getting excited for the draft and everything that's else to come in this offseason here.
Oh, that's great. That's great. You know, I know I've told you this before, but that was one of the things that I tried to go to school for. It just didn't work out in my favor of it. So I'm really hoping you get to do what we kind of all wanted to do, and that's cover the team that we're fans of and stuff like that. But that's great that you're getting to, Mizzou's not a small school by no means. So I mean,
Right,
you're getting good experience go through there. So it's great seeing you get that experience. So if you get to take that next step and become a writer of a professional team, then it's not so much of you're not so starstruck with things. You've got that feel to it already.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and I think it has been obviously a pleasure to really get all these experiences early on, and it's really made me like, not that I have a bunch of people come and asking me advice, but when I think of what is the most helpful thing to do in that, it's just to do the job, if that makes sense. And obviously you're not, if you're just some random person, you can't go to a basketball press conference for SEC school, but to do the writing, to do what you want to do, and then eventually hopefully that leads to more opportunities. But yeah, it's been great, and I appreciate those words.
Do you get a lot of like podcasters saying, "Hey, can you give me any kind of insight on this or this," or has that not happened quite yet?
Podcasters, not really. I did have somebody. I went into my meteorology class, my last gen ed last year or last semester, sat down, and this kid next to me, a freshman, asked me, like, "Are you Joey Van Zummeren and do you cover the Packers?" That's like, why? Why does he know me? But he was a freshman journalism student, and that was the most famous I've ever felt. Podcasting, not as much. Writing, I've leaned more towards. But yeah, podcasters can reach out to advice. I guess it's been a while since I put a mic and headset on since the retirement of the Underage Packers podcast.
Well, I just know that, like, for the Hawkeyes, there's like 100 different podcasts that just cover the Hawkeyes. So I was wondering if
Right.
maybe somebody got a hold of you and said, "Hey, can you get me, what can you tell me about insert name here, and can you give me any inside scoop on them or anything like that?"
Okay, like that. Yeah, I have had people like ask me for like if I can get them free Mizzou tickets, and absolutely not. And most times, yeah, I'm working on building that Rolodex, so I don't usually have inside sources on players. The most I can offer sometimes is interactions I've had with them just from being peers with them and going from the same school as them.
Yeah, that's got to be interesting though. Now, obviously, since you are with Mizzou, I don't follow it as much because I'm a Hawkeye at
Right.
heart.
Except in the
But
Music
you
City
get
Bowl,
to,
I'm sure.
yeah, well, yeah. Well, come on, we don't even want to talk about how the Hawkeyes have been doing in a lot of this stuff. that punting game is still on point.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And their kick returner as well.
Yeah. But do you get to have a lot of interaction with the players when it comes to writing your stories and that?
It depends on the sport, who's in charge of the communications. It's it was definitely an adjustment this past year when I covered Packers training camp to go to that where it's open locker room after practice every day. Pretty much any player on the team you want to talk to, you can go up and have a conversation with them compared to college where they're obviously a lot more watch aware and not wanting to throw all those players out there. They kind of have
Right.
three or four, 3 or 5 players that they usually stick to for interviews, and then it just kind of was a situation to situation basis where you can get them for a exclusive interview. But you do definitely get, even if it's not an interview, you do definitely get, um, especially with football, not an inside look per se, but you are around the team more obviously just from walking the same spaces as them and overhearing those conversations.
That's cool. I mean, that really is great. I like I said, I'm happy for how you're getting to do things like that, and it's great to see you being able to cover a lot of those things. But that's still got to be intimidating a little bit. The you're talking to these guys that you watch on every Saturday or Sunday, and
Yeah, it definitely is at first, and I feel like I was able to get over that curve early. And I'm not saying that to pat on my back, but I think I just threw myself into those fires early, and that has really benefited me as well. But yeah, it's a little bit you're a little bit nervous at first, but I definitely think I even saw again with covering at Packers training camp, and then I covered Packers at Tennessee this past year. Once you get over that, it wasn't an adjustment for me like going from college to NFL players talking to. It was, kind of the same skill set and the same mindset.
yeah, I mean, building memories on that, man. So, but I think people are tired of hearing me ask you questions on not being able to live my dreams. So let's go ahead and get into this week's position group. We are talking wide receivers this week. Obviously, that is somewhat of a need the Packers are going to have with contracts coming up at the end of the season, injuries, the lack of production that happened when this receiver or that receiver went down. So it is something that I do think Gutekunst is going to be looking at, whether it be a free agency ad, draft ad, maybe a trade, who knows. But let's start with the first topic, and we'll go with what is your opinion on the status of the Packers room, wide receiver room right now?
Well, it's a lot different than it was ahead of the start of the season, where I was fully on board and almost drinking the Kool-Aid of what this coaching staff and the wide receivers themselves were telling us of being such a deep group that had so many young, selfless guys. And I'm not saying they're not young or selfless, but the depth, I mean, can be called in question just because of what you mentioned of the lack of certainty in how specifically Dontavian Wicks and Jaden Reed are developing. Christian Watson and Romeo Dobbs both coming up on contract years. Christian Watson still really at this point in his career. I mean, I think he's a really talented player. I think he can be really important to this Packers offense, but still at this point, somewhat of a mystery, I would say, in his career. And obviously going into the contract year for him, Green Bay kind of uncertain on exactly what his market value would be. But again, I think he can be a really important part of the offense. And overall take on it is, I would agree with you that they need to add it there. I think I agree with Josh Jacobs too of need needing. I hate all the terminology around it because there's negative connotations to all of them. I think, especially with Packers' relationship with the wide receiver position over the past decade. But alpha, wide receiver one, whatever you call it, there is a need for that reliable guy. And again, I think there's negative connotations to however you want to put it. And it doesn't have to be a guy that Jordan Love forces the ball to all the time. And it doesn't have to be Justin Jefferson. It doesn't have to be a top 5 guy, but a reliable option, because reliability certainly is not a trait in this wide receiver room, whether that be with injuries or with drops. So I would agree with you that they need to add at the top, but then also throughout could use some more options just because of the uncertainty of everybody in that room pretty much.
Well, and Goodicus kind of follows the Ted Thompson belief that it's, prepare for the future. So we've seen him in the past where, we may have a complete depth on one position, but he still grabs this guy or that guy or whatever, just in case something happens. But, and, to kind of go on the Josh Jacobs thing, I know a lot of people were kind of taking all that comment out of context that, they were trying to make a bigger deal out of it than it was, but they didn't look at the first part of the quote when he say, hey, we got a great group of guys, we got all this, we just need that one extra guy to put us over the top on things. And so it, it's true, like you said, Romeo, Christian, Jaden, and Dontavian, they really haven't taken that leap to further themselves as a top dog in it. Maybe Romeo a little bit more because he seems to be Jordan's safety valve when things start to break down. So we saw that happen when Romeo got hurt and when he got his quote unquote suspension, that there wasn't really that consistency there because Jordan didn't have his go-to guy with things. But then on the opposite end, we didn't see a lot of, plays being made when after Christian got hurt. So it is one of the it's really weird. I agree with you going into next season, the 2026 season, I don't see Christian Watson being able to say, hey, pay me top wide receiver money. But we have seen some really ridiculous wide receiver contracts, like the Christian Kirk one in Jacksonville, just to name one off the top of my head, where not a top guy ended up getting like top guy money. And so does that happen with Christian? Does that happen with Romeo? Because while Romeo may not have the full athletic ability that Christian Watson has, Romeo is, and I hate comparisons, but they come with the territory. Romeo is more of your Devontae, where he's going to make plays based off of his agility more than his speed, and so there is a need for that. And I mean, hell, they're talking about wanting to trade for Devontae back. Well, you've got Devontae Light and Romeo. You just need to get another guy around him to, you know, take the pressure off of him. Not saying that, Romeo's ever going to be this, superstar number one receiver, but he's still going to be a good complement to whatever else you can get out of him. I love Romeo. I loved him from before the draft. He was one of my top guys when the draft came that year, and I really was happy. But just to round out things with the wide receiver group, returning on the roster for this next year per right now. Of course, you got Romeo Dobbs, Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, but you've got Malik Heath, who I really like. I think he could be something if he was given a little bit more of a chance, but because of the
Yeah.
stacked depth right now, it's really hard for him. Bo Melton. Bo is one of those that I could take him or I could leave him. I'm not going to be heartbroken if they got rid of him, but I'm appreciative of what he can do because he, like Christian, has athletic traits. Then you've got Julian Hicks and Tulu Griffin, who were given what do they call them, futures contracts.
Future, yeah.
Yeah. So right now, that's what they have and Cornelius Johnson. I almost forgot about them. I could be mad about that one. Cornelius Johnson out of Michigan, who I think Mike said really was more of a special teams guy than an actual. But I could be wrong. I when he says something about Michigan, I tend to tune out. So, but right now that's what they're looking at. It's basically the same thing that we were seeing coming into the 2024 season. So there's no real big changes there. Outside of the three futures contracts. The rest of them should be back for 2025, barring, a major acquisition, which leads us to the next portion of the breakdown is free agency. Joey, there are a lot of free agents going to be coming out this year, but a
Mhm.
lot of them aren't very appetizing. And it's kind of weird using appetizing for people, but hey, it is what it is. Who do you think would be I know T. Higgins is the big name out there, but I think that's
Right.
because he's the only one that he's young, he's got the athletic traits to him. But outside of T. Higgins, or you can even talk about T. Higgins if you want, is there anybody in the free agency pool right now? Because obviously we're before any cuts have happened. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, not really. I'm even not sold on the idea of T. Higgins, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm just scrolling through a list right now. Outside of him, that, like, to your point, there is very little options. I mean, I think they're going to add somebody in this kind of middle of the pack as far as free agent wide receivers go. But also, like you've hit on a few times, the wide receiver market is difficult to predict. Exactly what those contracts are looking like. I think we have to talk about Devontae Adams. I I
Yeah,
don't I don't think it's going to happen, and because I just don't know why he would want to. Obviously, Green Bay is a team that went 11-6 last year, played a close game against the Super Bowl champions. Like, they're a good team. I'm not saying that that's a reason he wouldn't want to play for them, but he it would make sense if Aaron Rodgers was still playing here and he'd want to run it back with his old friend, and that's why he went to New York. But obviously, it seems like playing on the West Coast, coast of family, is still a big deal for Devontae, and so we'll see. I mean, he's obviously had experience with, but yeah, I can't see it. I don't know what the market looks like for him, but yeah, outside of T. Higgins, outside of maybe Devontae Adams, I mean, I'd be happy if Devontae comes back. Don't get me wrong there, but I don't know. It's hard to say there, but I think they're gonna make a Devin Funches esque signing that would hopefully turn out more than Devin Funches did.
uh, on the Devontae thing, I think the only way it happens is if the Jets cut him. I don't think the Packers will trade for him unless it's like a middling draft pick or whatever. I don't think they'll end up trading for him just based on contract and all that stuff. But if for some reason the Jets were to release him and the Packers could sign him back for a smallish contract, I do think he wouldn't mind coming back. I know he says he loves the floor, and he loved love. It was just, it was time. He felt kind of disrespected, and if you believe everything, he felt kind of disrespected in contract talks. But he didn't have issues with the Packers. He didn't have issues with the coaching. He didn't have issues with playing with Jordan Love. And I think at this point, we're looking at what is he? He'll be 31 this year, or
I thought
will be
older, but
31.
let's see.
I don't know. It's so weird. Everybody's
He's
young
he's
to me anymore.
32, 33 in December.
32. Okay, so he is coming down on the bottom part of his career. I mean, he could play for a while longer depending on how his body holds up, but theoretically based on what we've seen with other players at that position, we are looking at the last few years of his career. So, maybe for a final chance to make a run at a ring, which the Packers, barring injuries, and if they make some decent pickups and all that, have a shot at it. But I kind of agree with you that actually I'm kind of 50-50 on it. Like I
Mhm.
said, I will be more 75-25 if he's cut, but I don't think a trade will happen.
Right, and I'll say too, I guess I would add in another pro for him to return to Green Bay is a little bit of what you were hitting on there. Of there is like the legacy factor, and I think going back to Green Bay would be a somewhat safer move in terms of that because I don't know how he thinks about the last few years of his career, but I imagine at least the way I saw it when he was traded from Green Bay to Las Vegas was a move of I think as a lot of players probably don't admit it during their careers, but wanting to put together his Hall of Fame resume. And obviously, the main reason he left Green Bay is, I mean, like you said, possibly the contract negotiations there, but then also not knowing what the quarterback situation was going to look like and avoiding that instability by going to play with his friend in a big market. And obviously, that
It was
all
even
crashed and
more
failed.
unstable than what the Packers had.
Yes, and then after he did that, he went to again play with his friend in a big market, which went even worse. So I think I mean the Packers hardly bring back old players. I feel besides Tramon Williams in the NFC Championship game, and then he didn't take a snap. You got Randall Cobb, but that was a Rodgers request. James
You had
Jones,
James Jones.
yeah,
Amon Green came back for a season or two
mm.
after the Texans. So I mean, they do bring him back, but it's not like a
You want to count
major
Jared Valder in
acquisition.
there?
But I mean, they do bring him back. It's just more of a uh, all right. We need a depth piece to help our young group in there, which kind of feels what Devontae would be at this point for the
Yeah,
Packers. It is a depth piece that will help our younger wide receivers, grow, which was like the James Jones one, which was like the Amon Green one, where they needed help because injuries were plaguing them, but we're going to bring back a veteran that knows the system that can help our young guys get pushed further in.
yeah, and the experience with LaFleur, I mean, I forget that his last 4 years with Green Bay were with LaFleur, so it's not like they're strangers at all.
Yeah, LaFleur signed in what, 19?
Yeah,
And then he was traded in 22. So yeah, about 3, 4 years.
yeah,
I think it was 22. I could be wrong. I keep forgetting that this year is 2025 already. So, my math could be all wrong on it. Now, I do want to bring up one that I think would be an interesting kind of veteran piece. And I didn't even realize he was a free agent. I thought the Buffalo Bills had him for a little bit longer. And that's Amari Cooper. He's not
mm,
like a big time. I mean, he's got the name value to him. He did
yeah,
have a pretty productive career, but I think that would be a solid pickup just as, like I said, a veteran type presence for our younger guys who has experience as a number one receiver because that's what he was viewed in Dallas. That was what he was viewed in as or viewed as in with the
Oakland.
Raiders.
Yep.
Yeah, the Oakland Raiders. I was gonna say Las Vegas. I was like, no, I'm just gonna go Raiders. Uh, but I think he could, and he's still producing. I mean, he wasn't getting as
Yeah.
much play with the Bills, but they were pretty stacked as is. So I think he would be a solid fit if they were to go that route.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is a veteran, and I think over the past 2 seasons, Green Bay, the whole mindset has obviously been we're going young, 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 and obviously there's the benefits of that as far as contracts, as far as having kind of being able to shape the clay into the form you want it to as your coaching staff. But also we've seen this past season. I think my lead for my story that I wrote after the Packers lost to Philadelphia was this was again another example, as the whole entire season has been, that the Packers are too young and undisciplined to win anything. And so I think veteran, I mean, obviously as far as leadership and just reliability, again, is the biggest thing to add at this wide receiver position.
Look at you name dropping your articles on this show. But really, I heard the little buzzwords about like Marquez Valdez Scantling. It's like, no, he's not the type that, or
No.
another young guy would, or two young guys would be like Diami Brown, from Washington, and then Elijah Moore, who was with Cleveland. But I think they're to the point where they're just going to be role players than anything big. I mean, they're still young enough that anything could happen, but I think for the most part, get you kind of do what they did with safety, but not maybe as far into safety as they did. Don't
Yeah.
have to go out and sign that top name guy, but sign a veteran and then draft a couple of guys.
Right.
Which leads
Yeah. I
us
mean,
to our why we're here now. See, I'm getting good at the segues. Maybe I don't need Kwano after.
If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Granger understands that you go to great lengths and sometimes heights to ensure the power is always flowing, which is why you can count on Granger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRANGER, click Granger.com, or just stop by. Granger, for the ones who get it done.
Plan on flying? In order to board domestic flights, your driver's license or state-issued ID must be a real ID. Learn how to get your real ID today at tsa.gov/real ID or visit your local DMV.
But I'm going to open this up to you because I know there's two guys coming out of your school that at least one of them is going to be talked about as a potential first rounder. I did happen to look at the one. I couldn't really find much on the other guy, so I'm
Mhm.
hoping to hear a little bit about him from you. But go ahead and talk about your guys.
Yeah. So the first one being Luther Burden the third, expected first round draft pick, has been since his freshman year of high school, basically out of East St. Louis High School. Absolutely changed everything at the University of Missouri's football program, but as he is as a prospect, it's been interesting the past 2 years to track his draft projection because after his sophomore year, 2023, projected as a top 10 pick. And then this past season, production goes down on paper in the box score. Territory McMillan has a great year with Arizona. So now it's looking like Luther will be in that Packers range of the 20s. I still can't really read it because I can't tell how much NFL teams are actually going to place on production at its face value because actual skill wise, Luther Burden took no steps down at all in this past season. So I would definitely caution against if you're just looking at pure stats. Luther Burden did nothing different in 2024 than he did in 2023. A lot of circumstances around him. Quarterback play was not nearly as good in 2024. There were some injuries at quarterback. Offense as a whole kind of seemed to change their approach from 2023 to 2024. There was a few games where Luther didn't get a single target until late in the second quarter. And again, not to his fault at all. To who he is as a player, very shifty guy. I know a lot of people like to compare him to Debo, which I think makes sense. He's a smaller guy than him, not as slick as a body for sure. But he's not necessarily a burner with his speed. He's not going to beat you on a go route most of the time. His main skill is taking those shallow, medium routes. And then after that, when he is, I mean, I was going to say one-on-one with a defender in space, but it's really, he can be one against all six defenders off the line, and he will find a way to make space for himself after the catch. As far as his fit with the Packers, it would be really interesting. I'd be really excited for it. I don't think he's really going to be the guy the Packers are looking for if they go in round one. I think if they're looking at the top 100 for a wide receiver, I think it is going to be someone in that Christian Watson mold. And Luther Burden isn't necessarily that, but he would absolutely be an incredible playmaker that would be really fun to watch in Matt LaFleur's offense with his creativity. The other one, did you have something to add on, Luther?
Well, I was just going to ask. I mean, I agree with most of what you say with it. I did
Mm-hmm.
say that his routes were good, but he could get sloppy in them, so he's got to tighten those up
Yeah.
just a little bit. My main concern right now is you out of anybody that we'll probably talk to knows just as well as anybody else who covers the draft. Schools tend to overestimate like measurements. Now, the
Mm-hmm.
site that I look for my draft, for my I don't look at it for what they put as rankings. They have them listed as number 2 for their rankings out of wide receivers, but they have him listed as 5'11".
Mm-hmm.
Is he 5'11", or is he a little bit smaller than that?
I I would say probably a little bit smaller. But I couldn't tell you for sure.
Because that right there is the thing that worries me the most. I mean, people are going to come at me and say like, "Well, Tank Dell, Tank Dell." Yeah, and the last few seasons, Tank Dell has ended up injured or whatever. Not saying Burden is like that because Burden at least has the bulk to him. Because this has him listed as 208, which is pretty good for his size.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's just I see him as being used in the Packers offense similar to what Jaden Reed does. Well,
Yes.
does that mean the Packers are going to draft another Jaden Reed? I think Burden is going to be a little bit better than Reed. I think
Hmm.
he's got a lot more polish to him, and I thought he had similar uh, fight to him. I mean, these are the notes that I made on him. I said he was tough because he was always, it seemed like he was trying to break tackles and he was fighting for everything. I said he was quick and he was fast. Now, again, this website has him listed as, I don't know if this is a predicted 40 or where they got this number, but he's listed under 40. It says 4.41, which would be a hell of a speed for him because I mean, the fastest quote receivers are running 4.29s, 4.3s, and stuff like that. So for him to just be barely out of that, puts him as a good speed. Again, I said he's got good fight to him. He's got good routes, but he can get sloppy with them, so he's got to fight. The one knock on him I had, and it's not just him. I had it on a couple other wide receivers. Don't run backwards. I don't know
Yes.
how many times I would see that he would like cut it this way and then he would run 10 yards deep just to come around and try to get yards off of him. And then I do have that he is probably or he had a little bit of double clutch, so concentration on his catches a little bit. So watch it in a little bit more. Don't worry about this until you have to. Worry about getting the ball. But other than that, I think I look at him as a faster and maybe a little bit more polished Jaden Reed.
Right. And that's exactly what I thought too, and what's been keeping me away from fully going out on that. It's like, what? Again, I think obviously the thresholds Green Bay has for every position, it seems to be especially important with wide receiver. And kind of the one time they've gone outside of that has been Jaden Reed. So what? I don't see what he. I mean, again, I agree with you that he's probably going to be a better player than Jaden Reed, but kind of fits that same skill set and that same creativity. So yeah, it would be interesting if they end up going in that direction.
I think if he fell to the second round, that they would be more apt to it. I don't
Yeah.
see them going outside their thresholds for a first round pick. Nothing against him. I
Yes.
love the kid. I thought he was good. It just I don't know if they'll go outside the thresholds to take another Jaden Reed, unless now this is crazy. This is really crazy. They package a Jaden Reed for something else. I'm
Fair
not
enough.
saying that they need to do it, but there's a lot of talk on, well, they need to trade for Max Crosby or they need to trade for Myles Garrett. You're going to have to give up somebody or something for one of those players. And, what do the Packers have an abundance of? Right now, wide receivers.
Fair enough. Although I would say if they're putting together a package for Max Crosby, we probably won't have that pick to go for Burden either. But yes.
Maybe. I don't know. I think Gutekunst can sell water to a drowning man. So,
As evident by the Preston Smith timeline.
Well, and that is evident of the Aaron Rodgers trade. I mean, it looks like we're really
Yes.
winning that one right now. So,
Oh, I've loved watching that. It's been so much fun, honestly.
all right. So I can't even remember what the other kid's name is because, like I said, I
Yes.
couldn't find too much on him. So, what you got?
Yeah, Theo Weiss Jr. He played at Oklahoma until 2022. Started at Missouri in 2023. He was Missouri's leading wide receiver this past year, even over Burden. And he's a deep threat in the sense that he's more of a possession guy. He's not not a speedster, but 6'2", 192. So he has a nice frame, really good at contested catches. That's his main thing. he is definitely on the older side. I want to say, I don't want to get this wrong, but I believe 23, 24, 23. It'd be 24 in June. So there's that, but definitely looking at day 3 pick. So again, that's kind of more around the range when the Packers are willing to step outside their comfort zone with those thresholds. And they've been a little bit more open to older guys as of late, just because they've kind of had to
We're
with.
still we're still in that whole COVID region where we're still dealing with some of those players. So the ages are really hard to go off of right now.
Yeah, exactly. So I can't. I'd be surprised if Green Bay ends up selecting Weiss. I don't think he's their type. I think they're looking for a guy that can do similar things that they want him to. I mean, he has the height. I just don't know if he has the. I don't know if he's thick enough. I don't know if he's fast enough for, again, that Christian Watson mold. But again, it's day 3 where they might be willing to step outside that.
And who knows? Because I was trying to do while I was doing some of my research, I was trying to find guys that they have talked to already through, the Senior Bowl, the Shriner Bowl, all that stuff, that pre-draft stuff. And they talked to Will Shepherd out of Colorado, and they
Hmm.
talked to God, I just forgot his name. He's out of Eastern Washington, and I can't think of what his name is off the top of my head at the moment, but they seem to be more of that late round uh, uh, UDFA style because, and I can talk about Shepard a little bit more because I did see some on him. Uh, he's tall and lanky. I think he's listed at like 6'4", 6'5", but he's only like 190, maybe 200 pounds. But he's kind of like what you were just talking about with Weiss, where contested catches. He was very
Hmm.
good at the fighting catch. He did have a little bit of wiggle after the catch, but I just I'm not sure about his speed. I don't know if he's got
Hmm.
the speed to go with anything on it. Um,
I'll say
so
Weiss is
yeah,
a pretty good run blocker too, so he has that going for him.
and that's another thing that was kind of hard to watch in some of these films because when they cut him up, they cut right after, like they don't show them blocking, and that's the only
Yeah.
thing that sucks about it. So, all right, so we got your Missouri boys going.
Mhm.
Is there anybody else that really caught your eye in this pre-draft uh, uh, lead up?
Yeah, Jalen Royals has definitely been a guy, kid from Utah, who has been getting a lot of traction on Packers Twitter. He seems to be one of Packers Twitter's guys for this year. Again, kind of a deep threat guy, but also has that athleticism, um, where he can get yards after the catch. I don't know his size, but I think he is on. It's kind of
According to
both
this, six
height.
foot 205.
Okay, so could be a little bit taller, but has good size there. So I'm liking Jalen Royals, and again, I think in that range of where Green Bay is going to be looking at. I don't see round 1, so but I definitely think round 2.
Well, let's go ahead and say this.
Uh
It's
huh.
been 22 years since the last time the Packers took a wide receiver in the first round. The draft is in Green Bay. As of right now, the Packers have a first round pick. Is this the year that the Packers surprise everybody and take a wide receiver in the first round?
I mean, I think it would align with what Brian Gutekunst is talking about of ramping up the urgency to compete for championships. I feel like wide receivers in the first round is a position that, more so than other positions, you can get guys that can produce day one. So it would align in that way.
I think it would be interesting. I think everybody would just be like over that guy would have like the key to the city on the first day if he was a wide receiver and drafted in the first round. Because like I said, it's been 22 years. It was Javon Walker that was the last one in
Hmm.
2022. Or now it's 23 years. Sorry. Like I said, I keep forgetting it's 2025. But and good lord, were you even born at that point?
You said it's 2003 or 2?
2002.
Oh no, I was not born.
Yeah, see, so you weren't even alive the last time they took a wide receiver in the first round. I know the rumors was that they were trying to jump up and take Christian Watson in the first round, but the Vikings blocked it. But it's been forever. I like I said, I think that would be. Now I don't know who it would be because I always put this preference out there when I do quote unquote scouting because I don't even view myself as a scout, but I watch film on a lot of these guys. I try not to put a grade on them, or not a grade, but a round on them, because like my former co-host Nick and I were all over Puka Nacua. Well, shit, if it was me, I'd have took him in like the third round, but he didn't go until the seventh round. So I mean, and right now it's making Nick and I look like geniuses because Puka's the next top thing. So, but back on topic, Jalen Royals, I did like him too. He reminded me a little bit of maybe of a faster Romeo. I was seeing a lot of perks there. I feel sorry for the guy. And I know it's going to be weird for people to say, well, why do you feel sorry for the guy? Because his quarterback for at least part of the season was Spencer Petras. And we dealt with Spencer here at the University of Iowa, and he was not that great of a quarterback. So I do feel sorry for the guy in a little way. Now, it sounded like Petras did a little bit better out with Utah State than he did with the University of Iowa, but there is that. But yeah, I did like Jalen Royals, and like you said, there is a lot of talk of him going around in Packers verse at the moment. I said his route running wasn't the greatest. His speed looks okay. But like I said, according to this website, it has him listed as like a 4.38 40. If he can come in at 6 foot 205 and run a 4.38 40, then I think the Packers would have to do everything in the world to get him because that's size and speed. Usually you don't get somebody over 6 foot that's running that fast unless they're an athletic freak. But yeah, Jalen Royals is obvious. I don't know about first rounder, but Packers' money spot has always been the second round, so maybe that would be where they take him.
Yeah, I mean, back to a conversation on the first round, I think there are some guys that could fit. I mean, again, in their range that I think would be better fits in them than Burden. I think Matthew Golden from Texas is a pretty exciting option there. Mega Abuka from Ohio State. I mean, again, he's older, but he definitely would have. I mean, you were talking about the excitement that would be surrounding Packers wide receiver drafting in the first round. He's definitely not like a flashy playmaker, more a kind of reliable slot guy, not the craziest athleticism in the world. But yeah, I mean, Golden and Abuka would be who I'd be looking at in the first round there.
I throw another one out there for you if you go based off this website, and I'm using NFLDraftBuzz.com, and they have their own ranking systems. But Trey Harris out of Ole Miss, I think would be another one because he fits a little bit more the Packers thresholds than if you go by what they have measured here. Now they have him going as a little bit of a slower 40 than I would expect, but they have him listed as a 4.55, which was I think only 0.04 seconds less than what Devontae ran at the combine. But I really, and Miss has really pumped out a lot of good receivers over the years. He's got a good contested catch receiver.
Yep.
I said his speed looks good. So I don't know, like I said, I don't know where they get the 40 numbers from, if that's just like some kind of what do you call it, analytics type deal like a PFF, or they track how fast he ran and then they divide it by pi and multiply it by the diameter of I don't know what the hell they do. But I said he had good physicality, and like I said, that would be Ole Miss has really hit on a lot of their wide receivers. He fits the thresholds. I wouldn't be against it. I think if you could get anywhere, they have him listed as their number 5 wide receiver, so that would probably put him down around the Packers range. And, that would be, I think I would be all right with it. And then the other guy, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add in on Harris again. Yeah, I agree with what you got there, and I think he fits what they're looking for and what they need. I think the physicality is definitely something. Even with Christian Watson, who is their contest guy, catch guy now, I think Harris would add more to that.
I didn't watch Golden, but I did watch his teammate Isaiah Bond. And
Hmm.
while I love what Bond can do, I said he was a faster Jaden Reed. So that goes back to the Bird conversation. Do we just draft another, Jaden Reed and run with two guys like that? Or
Right.
do we, what's going on? The one that I'll throw out here that I've seen a lot of people talk about as a first rounder is, and I'm going to butcher this guy's name. So if he somehow listens or whatever, I'm sorry, but I never said I was good at names. Elik Ayomanor out of Stanford,
Hmm.
Ayyomanor, something like that. Again, he fits a lot of the Packers thresholds. Uh, let's see, I had him wrote down here. Let me see if I can find him.
6'2", 210.
Yeah, and like I said, going off what this website says, they got him as a 4.42 40. And see, I said it didn't look like he was super fast, but he had decent speed. He had good separation. He tracked the ball well. I thought he needed to use his hands more than, because he tended to body catch it a little bit, and that can't really go in the NFL. I mean, you have your times when you need to body catch it, but in the NFL you've got to be more of a hands catcher because the quarterback is going to put it where only your hands can get it. So your body's not going to be able to go everywhere the quarterback's going to throw it. And I said he looked like a really good receiver. Now, like I said, I've heard first round out of him. I don't really put round grades on things. But have you watched him? What do you think out of him?
No, I have not done
No,
any
nothing.
work on him. No.
I get really scared with Stanford because there's been a lot of times that I've seen a lot guys come out of Stanford that I've really liked, and then they don't do anything in the NFL.
Yeah.
What was it? Was it last year or the year before? I really liked Eli Higgins, and he ended up trying to convert to wide receiver, and he went late in the draft, and he's really done nothing. So Stanford is one of those that it's hard for me to gauge. So who else you got?
Let's see here. I got a list. Um, have we talked about Pat Bryant from Illinois?
No, but I have one
I
from
don't think we.
Illinois that I would talk about.
Okay. Pat Bryant, I believe, is kind of more in that day 2, day 3 range. But again, kind of the same story of a lot of these guys we've been talking about of fitting the size thresholds Green Bay has, but then also and then also having that contested catch ability, 6'3", 200. Yeah, I mean, just his deep threat ability is kind of a little bit better than some of the other guys we've talked about, where it's just kind of contested catches and being able to fight at the catch point. I think he's a little bit more athletic. So yeah.
Now I'll talk about his teammate, and that's
Hmm.
Zachariah Franklin. And really, he's kind of my Puka of this year, where I'm not sure how his speed fits in. So because he didn't look like he was breaking away from anybody. So I'd be really interested to see if he's at the combine and what he runs for a 40. But I said the same thing. He had some amazing catches. He had a lot of contested catches. He had a lot of one-handed catches. He had a lot of sideline catches that I felt the same way that I felt about Puka, that this guy can catch almost everything. And his routes look solid. And then, like I said, he's got good fight, average size, but I'm not sure about his speed. So, I think depending on what he runs, he could be like Pat Bryant and be a mid to late round guy that the Packers could look at.
That, that's main guys I had on my list.
All right. Well, I got a whole other list that I looked at, and we can talk about a couple of them. And then, what are we setting at a time? We're about an hour, so. I got my handy dandy notebook. I think my favorite wide receiver out of this whole group, I mean, I like Trey Harris. I like Zachariah Franklin. But I think my top guy would have to be Jack Beck out of TCU. He's strong, fights through the contract, slippery, good hands, speed looks good. He had good tracking of the ball. I learned from the Twitter group that I followed that he actually was recruited by LSU as a tight end. And then once I watched him play, that made a lot of sense because he was fighting like a tight end, but he just didn't have the size of a tight end.
Shoot, he looks a little bit like a tight end, but yeah, he's not wide enough.
No, I think he's only like 200 pounds, if that, and he's only like 6'1". Well, he's 6'2", 215, and that's definitely not tight end size. I mean,
Right.
that's even smaller than Luke Musgrave, who is your stretch the field type tight end. But if you can get, and it's weird to say because normally you say you want a tight end with a wide receiver mindset. If you can get a wide receiver with a tight end mindset, that would be something else. So I would really be interested in seeing him. I think he'll be more of a day 2 guy. Could sneak into the first round depending on what he would do at the combine. I think he's mainly going to be a day 2 guy. I suppose I better talk about the 2 Iowa State guys, even though we're a no Cyclones team, people around here. You got Jaden Higgins and I even forgot what the other guy's name is. Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. Noel I really liked, which sucks because, again, he's a Cyclone and I don't know, whatever. But I did really like him. He's smaller, good speed, look decent, hands look good. Again, he fits kind of the Jaden Reed mold, but maybe with more speed and maybe a little bit more bulk to him. Higgins is more of your big-bodied receiver. Now, I got blasted for this in the group chat, but I'm strongly think this, but I was told I was wrong. I think Jaden Higgins is maybe just a little bit more of an athletic Alan Lazard because it really didn't pop to me anything special. But, hey, who am I? I don't get paid to do this shit. I'm just a nobody that, and then I think the last guy I'll bring up is Jimmy Horn out of Colorado, Jimmy Horn Jr., which is another kind of slot guy, but he had tremendous speed, runs a good route, good wiggle. He's small, his hands look good, and I put a Tank Dell comp on him because he is that smaller type receiver. I think it has him listed as 5'10", and obviously that's not going. If he's listed 5'10" and he hasn't been officially, it went through his measurements and all that, then you've got to worry about what he's actually going to measure. Is he going to come in at 5'9" or whatever? I'm trying to pull it up real quick so I know I'm not talking out my ass here, but see, they have him listed as a 4'3", 440 on this site. So if he can even touch that would be tremendous. 5'10", 170 pounds. So you're definitely looking at that Tank Dell comp just by size, but I think he'd be a little bit more polished than Tank Dell.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. You got anything else to throw in there?
I mean, I was thinking I like Will Shepherd just because I'm an SEC guy, but I think overall, but I agree with you on what you added in on him too. I don't know if he really has that athleticism to get separation. But yeah, I think overall wide receiver, what Packers do at both free agency and in the draft will be really telling of where they feel this whole team is at and how much Brian Gutekunst really sticks to his word per se on wanting to pick up this urgency. And I think it shouldn't be lost that for how much we talked at the start of the episode of Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks, that both those two guys I think can still be real exciting players. No different from what we saw from them in the rookie year in that last half of the season of the potential they have. I think they can still meet that. And I think, it's very possible just some young goals that were magnified when you have such a young team. But at the end of the day, you can't go into a season, I think, with this much uncertainty at wide receiver. Even when Green Bay, all those years in 2020 and 2021, when there was the questions of, man, they have nobody at wide receiver, they knew what they were getting at least out of Devontae Adams, out of Allen Lazard, and a few other pieces in there. And this going into this year, I mean, I would say Romeo Doubs is a pretty known commodity. You don't know Christian Watson. I would be shocked if he plays in the regular season, if at all, next season. But we'll see on that. And then again with the two guys that are going to be entering year 3, and outside of that, I mean, I agree with you on Malik Heath, but overall, again, I think the moves that Green Bay makes at this position all offseason are going to be pretty telling of just how they feel where they feel they are on this ramp up right now.
So I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Dan Kotnick last week.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to give me a specific player, but you can if you want. Day 1, NFL draft. Packers are on the clock. Pick 23. What's the move?
What do I want them to do, or what's my prediction?
What's your prediction? It doesn't necessarily have to be wide receiver. I know we're on the wide receiver episode, but what is your prediction for pick number 23? Do they stand pat? Do they trade? What position group do they take if they stay pat? Or if you got a name in your mind that you would love to see him draft, go for it. Put your prediction out on the table.
Man, I feel like this year, I felt the same way this past year of I would not be surprised by anything. I could really see them. I could see them by the start of April not holding on to pick 23 or first round pick anymore. I could see them making one of those blockbuster trades. I could see them on draft night trading up, although I would say that's less likely. I could see them trading down just because I would say they have cornerback, edge that they really need to invest at both of those. But I would say strongest prediction, I think, oh man, I want to say they're going to draft a cornerback because that feels like the most obvious place they need to add it. But it feels like every year there's one of those that they don't end up adding there. I would say right now I feel like it's going to be an edge rusher.
There you go. There's the prediction. Well, we'll see what happens. You know, what's the countdown? We're under 70 days, aren't we? It's like,
yeah, I would think it starts April 26th.
I know it's April 23rd, or 26th. Okay. Sorry. I'm trying to think, what were my days that I took off? I took off the 23rd to the 26th, so it's got to be like the 24th, 25th, and 26th. So we're getting close, but Joey, why don't you give everybody, where they can reach you, what they can see, what you're up to, or, what are you up to, where they can find you and all that good stuff, how they can support you.
I'm on. Yes, absolutely. I'm on Twitter at JoeyVZ_. That's where you find me all the time. And then do the cover Mizzou football and basketball every day over at Missouri Tigers on SI, and through that same network, I'm working with Bill Huber at Packers on SI, and I'll be at the NFL Combine next week. So can follow along there for draft updates.
We're still trying to get him more involved with Blue Sky because I think that's the way to go for the future.
I'm trying to. I wish a lot of journalists has pointed out, like I would love to, and I wish the market was there. But we're having a lot of success on that app for our Mizzou site, more so than Twitter. So I've been trying to get more engaged there.
Yeah, and I've said the same thing. I still try to put stuff out through the OPE Twitter, but my main account is mainly on Blue Sky because it's been a lot nicer over there. We'll just put it that way.
Yes, absolutely.
But you can follow the show at Ohana Packers, Ohana_Packers on Twitter. We don't quite have a Blue Sky account for the Packers, for the Ohana. We don't have an Ohana account. I don't know why I all of a sudden couldn't talk for a reason. But you can follow me, Iowa Joe, at bluesky.social. I think that, or it's iowajoe.bluesky.social, I think is how they do their things over there. Find us on Facebook, Ohana Packers Edition, Instagram, Ohana Packers Edition. Go to our website, ohanapackers.org. Joey wrote for us for a short time. I'm trying to talk him back into it, slipping him some ideas on how to get him back over here. You can find all our latest articles. Carlos is doing a great job over there. He just released his first mock draft a couple of days ago. And then he made the case for re-signing Josh Myers. You can find those over at ohanapackers.org. You can find past episodes of the show over there. You can still find a lot of Brian stuff. I know Brian said he'll be starting the recording March 1st, so find his stuff over there. Go over to the merch shop. Go buy some merch, support us. I put in a lot of minutes into a lot of those ideas, and I really didn't put a lot of time into it. So just help support the show. But it's not really expensive to do a podcast, but it's also not cheap either. So go support us, get you some great merch. Maybe if we get some more merch, I can hire Joey instead of it being an internship. Get him over here a little bit more. Or just retweet, like us, drop some 5-star reviews, helps us get seen by more people, and helps us continue our content. Next week, I think it is, I said this last week, and I completely missed it. I thought we were doing offensive line this week, but it ended up wide receiver this week. I think next week is offensive line. I don't know if we have a guest lined up. I'm not sure. I don't even know if Kwano's showing up, so be on the lookout for all that stuff. As Mike would say, go Pack Go, and aloha.
Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for OPE. Let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for OU. Wanna go.